So Philip bied vir ons vanaand aanbieding van 'n ewenaar wat hy oorgedoen het van Gerard. Wat blykbaar 'n hele paar probleme ingehad het. Baie dankie Philip vir die aanbieding en ek gaan dit oorhandig na jou toe.
Alright, nou ek gaan my bes probeer. Ek gaan die ding in Engels probeer aanbied vir wat dit werd is. So dankie vir die manne wat ingeskakel het vanaand. En ek sê dit met groot erns as ek sê ek is nie 'n expert op 'n ewenaar nie. Ek het net 1 of 2 al gedoen en ek is net 'n groot entoesias wat ongelooflik lief is vir die Model T Ford. So net om ons in die stemming te bring van hande vuil maak, het ek nogal gedink hierdie is 'n baie klassieke foto wat ek raakgeloop het van 'n werkswinkel, 'n Model T Ford werkswinkel van die era. En as jy hier op die voorgrond sien, dan is dit 'n elektriese engine, so dit is 1920 en later. Ek het probeer kyk, maar dit is die naaste wat ek kan kom aan 'n jaar. En dan staan daar 'n 26 in die agtergrond. Ek dink ons sou 'n fees van 'n tyd gehad het as ons ook in daai tyd kon geleef het. Ek het hierdie pryslys ingesluit. Dit is ek weet nie baie van ons het. En die wat nie het nie, moet kyk of hulle so 'n katalogusie vir hulle kan kry. Dit is nogal baie handig. Hy gee vir jou die pryse binne, maar hy gee ook vir jou die onderdele se nommers. En die handelaars vandag gebruik nog steeds dieselfde nommers as wat Henry Ford gebruik het in daardie jare. Ek het hierdie ook ingesluit om net miskien vir ons perspektief te gee van hoe alles bymekaar kom, net om ons geheue so 'n bietjie te verfris. Hierdie is die middelste gedeelte, en dis nou hier waar ek gaan probeer om Engels te praat. That is the differential case. And then in the inside of the differential case, you've got your 3 spider gears, and you've got the differential gear. And the differential gear is attached to your side shaft. Then you've got 4 roller bearings, 2 on each side. And then please remember that you've got a left-hand side bearing sleeve and a right-hand side bearing sleeve. But the bearings are interchangeable. Right? You can use left, right, it doesn't matter. Then, if you can see this section here, that is your differential housing, the diff housing. And then on the inside of the diff housing, you've got a nicely machined section there, and between the differential that has been machined and your differential case, you've got the 3 spaces or the 3 thrust washers on both sides, on that side there and on that side there. And then in the middle, I'll show it in the next one. It's also one that will show that much better for us. Then you've got your drive shaft there, and you've got your pinion and the ring gear here. That is your drive shaft spool bearing, and you've got a thrust washer there as well. The spool here has got an outer and an inner sleeve in the early cars. And your end play is between the thrust washer there and your sleeve that fits underneath the bearing, and at the top, your universal joint. Your inner, it's actually confusing if they talk about the inner oil, what we did, oil seal. people think that that is the inner oil seal is somewhere here. The inner oil seal is on the outside, but on the inside of the bearing. And your outer oil seal fits on that side there. All right, this is an exploded view, which makes it a little bit easier. There you can see the 3 thrust washers. There you can see the gasket. We'll come back to the gasket there. And there you can see the inner oil seal, which fits there, and the outer one on the outside. And then you can see the 2 sleeves on the one side, and the other 2 sleeves will be on the right-hand side. And this is the exploded view of the inside of the differential case. There you've got the 3 spider gears that I mentioned earlier, and that is the differential gear that fits to your side shaft there. All right. Surprise, surprise. Knock, knock. Who's there? Roy Kapi is there. Gerard brought the car and said, I must fix a few things, but it was goedjies wat ek net moes mooi maak en vernis, and I had to spray the wheels, etc. But when I finished the car, I took the car for a spin around the block, and when I took it there, I heard a funny noise coming from the back. It was a serious knock, a very serious knock, and then it will disappear, and then it will come back again. Philip and I, we spent hours on hours to try and find out where this knock was actually from. The closest that we could get was it was somewhere at the back, and maybe at the rear left. So we decided to pull the diff out with the drive shaft, and then we started to disassemble this whole thing. I think it's good to have the 2 books. If you are serious about Model Ts, buy yourself the repair manual. That there's quite a few of them. It's the fuel system, it is the front axle, the rear axle, whatever you need, there's a book for it. So these 2 books are imperative. The little tool here is the drive shaft bushing puller. We'll come to that a little bit later. That is the sleeve puller. It's to remove the sleeves on the outer side and on the inner side of the differential. It's a must to have a proper rear axle stand. If you want a really nice one, come and check the one that I've got in my garage. And if you're serious about that, ask Johan Rist. He's the manufacturer of this rear axle stand. What a beautiful stand. It works like a gem. It's fantastic. And then this is a section of the diff, cut out section with a sleeve, the bearing sleeve still in place. And it's also a must to have if you want to restore a diff. The bad part, and that's where I wished that I had someone to help me, was to clean everything, because to open up the diff, it's a bad job, because it's full of oil, and yeah, there's a totale gemors. So when you strip the diff, it's always good to get all parts properly clean, and then while you're cleaning the parts, it's maybe a good practice to check all the parts to see if they are still usable. check the axles for cracks. The parts that you remove, test them whether they are still usable, whether their clearances are still according to spec. So this is a bad job, but it's a very important job to do. And then just stress, clean it properly. It's nice when you start to assemble that everything is nice and clean and you can see what you are doing. And after I've opened up the diff, the first guy that I phoned was Philip Kuschke, and I said, please come and have a look, because there are lots of surprises that is awaiting you in this diff. Ek het gewens hierdie was stukkies silver of goud, but it wasn't. All these, there were more than these. That was, I found them in the diff as such, in the diff housing. And that was the reason for it. The drive shaft inner sleeve, the bearing sleeve, totally disintegrated. It chewed itself up and destroyed all those debris going through the pinion and the ring gear to the back of the diff. And as the ring gear turns, it sometimes pulled these little, ek weet nie wat se gemorsies jy dit noem nie, into the ring gear, and it also took it at the outside of the ring gear and it squeezed it between the ring gear and the housing. There you can see that the differential case was also damaged because the end play of the drive shaft was non-existent, and the drive shaft moved forwards and backwards, and when it moved backwards, it bumped against the casing. There you can see the pinion gear. The pinion gear is supposed to be like that right through. It chewed the ends up. You can see that the gear is broken off, and I presume that is when those bits of the sleeve went through in between the ring gear and the pinion. That is how I removed the drive shaft bearing, the drive shaft spool bearing. It literally fell into pieces. There you can see that there was really high heat involved here because the roller bearings turned blue. So that must have been high heat generated at the back. That is the spool at the back where the bearing fitted in, and this is the sleeve that fits into the spool. It's a press fit, and here you can see that the bearing or the sleeve was actually turning in the spool itself, because remember that the bearing disintegrated, and I think that was part and parcel of the high heat that was generated. Just look at the side shaft that I'm going to show you a small video. This is the side shaft and the differential gear. When you put the gear in onto the side shaft, it's a hard press fit. It's not something that you can squeeze in or hammer in. It's a serious press fit. Just check how loose these, and both sides were the same. The reason why, I can only think that we'll come to it a little bit later. The guy that did Gerard's diff thought that the screw locating the pinion or the sleeve and the spool together, that should go in there. And he actually thought it was a good idea to remove that and to put a grease nipple in. So please don't put a grease nipple there. Another surprise was when I removed the diff, I assembled it, I disassembled it, and that is what I found with the side shaft and the gear that is onto the side shaft. Just look at the play. The play here should be 5 thou. 5 thou is the thickness of a Coke tin. It's very thin. But look at the play that we had here. Okay. On the differential case, you've got 2 little holes in here, and in the holes there's 2 pins going in there, and the 2 pins secure your thrust washers to keep them in place. And on both sides, the pin was sheared off, so there was no thrust washers that could keep the axle at the back in place. So that was the big surprise that Roy Copy gave me, and that is the reason why we've got this little talk tonight on how to restore, or the maintenance on the rear axle of a Model T Ford. When I do the diff, okay, step 1 is to disassemble everything, clean everything. But the first thing that I assemble is the drive shaft. So it's important that, as we've said earlier, that you need to check all the different parts that you're going to use. And please, we must remember how important the differential of the Model T is for our safety. If you've got a differential failure, you've got no brakes, because your differential is your brake. So some people say they use a drive shaft, and if the dimensions are too little, they will weld it up, or they will chrome it up and then polish it again. Please, I don't think 4.5 or 4,700 Rand, that is the new price of a drive shaft, is worth your life. So I will never, I had a drive shaft here that I could have used for Gerard, but it was welded. And I was just, I will never use the side shaft or the drive shaft that has been welded. So check your tolerances here on your drive shaft. When you take the drive shaft, just check that the taper at the bottom is proper still. Your universal joint there, remember, if the universal joint fails, you haven't got brakes. So please ensure that all parts that you use in the drivetrain is of the highest quality that you can get. Don't take a chance. It's not always necessary, but in Gerard's case, it was definitely necessary. I had to replace the whole drive shaft. It is a brand new drive shaft. So I had to put in a new the sleeve here. The sleeve fits is a press fit. You can't just squeeze it over. It's a proper press fit, and therefore it's important that when you press it in, that you inline it properly, because the notch there has got a structural function. The notch there fits into the key there, and that is to secure this sleeve not to turn. Before you insert your sleeve, please check that you've got your thrust washers. Don't ask me why, but your thrust washers has got to fit in before you press that. Don't ask me why, but you need to do that because it's bad news if you've got to remove this thing again and start all over again. What I did with Gerard's car is I blued this whole thing, and I drew 2 lines across the length of the sleeve, so that when you start to press it, that you know you cannot move that thing a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. It's a press fit. You'll have to remove it again and start all over again. So maak seker dat daai reg is. Because I had to put in a new pinion as well, what I usually do is I use grinding paste to lapse it, just to make 100% sure that the contact surface is 100% there. When you tighten this thing properly and you remove the nut, you are not supposed to just slip it off again. Hy moet oordentlik vasbyt daar. So make sure that this surface is 100%. After you've done that with a grinding paste, please clean it properly again and then put it back. When you do a diff like this, you will know that those of you that have already done a diff, it's literally assembling it 20 times and then taking it apart for 21 times. It's a time-consuming job, because everything you're going to do about 3 or 4 times. The drive shaft, the spool at the bottom. The early cars has got a spool, but it's got a loose external sleeve there. Now that is the sleeve that I've mentioned earlier, that it's also a press fit here, and the later cars, the spool is machined so that you don't need the external sleeve, because the spool itself is the sleeve. But the early cars, right, you've got an external and an internal spool sleeve on your drive shaft. There you can see the little hole and the notch. The notch here on the outer one has got no function at all. The only use of that notch there is for you to guide yourself, because the notch and the hole, they align each other. And there you can see the hole again for the bearing sleeve set screw. That is the bearing set screw, and there it fits in there. 9 out of the 10 times, the drive shaft set screw, it's warm there. So please, if you redo a diff, brace that up, put it in your lathe, and just cut it then according to size, so that it's a very nice fit in the hole of the sleeve. Then we go to the top side of the prop shaft. You've assembled the bottom section now. You've got your pinion gear on. You've got the thrust washers there. You've got your spool in place. Attach them together. Sit 'n skroefie of 2 deur sodat hulle in plek bly. En dan sit jy jou torque tube in. And then you try and align. In your torque tube, there's a hole at the top. And when you put the universal joint in, it's got a hole. And the hole in the drive shaft, and the hole in the torque tube, and the hole in the universal joint, they should line up there. And 9 out of the 10 times, they don't line up. And it's going to keep you busy. If you install new drive shaft front bushings, these are the bushings that fit in your torque tube. There in the front, it fits about here where my arrow is pointing. Your universal joint fits from this side. This little tool is a very basic tool, but very useful. It's a long bolt, and at the bottom there, it's a square with little holes, little curves out of it, and that is for the what is klampnaels in Engels?
Rivets.
For the rivets in your torque tube, to pass the rivets. You throw it in from the back. Big washer here, a bigger washer so that you can close the opening where your universal goes in, and then you just pull it out. If you want to put a new one in, do exactly the same. You need a bushing driver. A bushing driver fits in here, and then you press it in, and if your universal fits against the bushing there, and then if it doesn't line up, 9 out of the 10 times it will not line up because you've played around with it, you've put a new bushing in, then you'll have to ream it. This is the reamer. There you can see the cutter. The size of that section there is exactly the same size of the bushing, and I've got it in my drill, and I just give it a kiss with a cutter there, and it takes the bushing away. Clean everything, start all over, assemble again, see if you can see if the pin aligns here. If not, start over again until you get, but please be very, very careful. If you take off too much, you're going to start all over again with a new bushing. The clearance that you've got to have here is absolutely zero. There should be no clearance at all. You must turn this with a spanner here. You've got to have proper resistance here, and if you can turn it here and the movement is freely, then you know it's perfect. If the pins at the top line up properly. If you turn it and you start to use it, it will open up a 2 to a 3 thousandths of an inch clearance. Bear in mind that a piece of paper, the thickness of a paper is about 2 thou. So it's very little. If you can detect play in your side shaft, in your drive shaft, then you know that your clearances are too big. And then, very important, you need to tighten the screw at the bottom. 70 foot-pounds of pressure torque there, and then please secure the split pin in. Never ever, when you tighten this thing and you see, but you've just gone past it, you just need to undo it a little bit to get the split pin in. Don't do it, because it's not 70 pounds of torque. Rather put the it in the lathe, take a small, mark a squint snit op hom, put it back, try it all over again. Yeah, you can see this is actually the pinion that went back into Rooikappie. Yeah, you can see how, if you compare this to the other one that I showed you, how severely damaged the other pinion was, and how nice this one is. All right, any questions so far with the drive shaft assembly? Nothing. Again, that's how I do it. I always start with the left-hand side of the differential. Why? Because the left-hand side is the side that has got the ring gear on. And remember, if you put the ring gear on the opposite side, it'll work. But you will have 2 reverse gears and only 1 forward gear. And if you think you're going forward, you will actually go backwards. I start with the left-hand side, and then, as we've said earlier, the left-hand side picture here is the differential case. Please ensure that your pins are 100% right. That it's not a thing that you can just put in and remove it by hand again. It's got to be properly secured. That is the pin that fits into that little hole. The small section fits in the hole. The bigger section is the height or the thickness of your steel washer that is part of your thrust washer. Here you can see the 2 pins are pressed in. If you find that they are still loose, just pin them with a round so that they cannot come loose. As I've showed you earlier, this is the left differential case, and we had a severe play here, as we've already. That's bad news, because if you've got play like that, you will never ever be able to set your a proper clearance in your diff. It's not possible. So what I've done is I took it to the engineering shop, and they opened up this whole section here. They inserted a new section there, and they machined it according to the differential gears that I had. So the differential gears, they did differ in diameter, but they were made accordingly. So that is the correct clearance that you can see here now. So the play that we've got there is 5,000. Okay. Again, when we start to assemble, we're busy assessing all the parts. We checked, and as I've said earlier, check the tapers, check your threads, the keyways, the thickness of your shafts. Are there any cracks? And please, as I've said, don't use cracked or welded stuff. These gear lock rings, we had to use 4 new gear lock rings in Gerard's the Roy Kappie's differential. Yeah, you can see they're nicely assembled. I did check all the tapers, the diameters, they were all fine. And then the differential gear was now properly fitted to it. As I've said, I start with the left-hand side, and then this is in the stand. So the photo is taken from the top. And now I'm busy with the differential case, the inside, where you've got your 3 spider gears. There you can see one of the thrust washers. So on the other side of the thrust washer, you've got your left-hand side side shaft running down. And now what you need to do is to get a zero tolerance between the 2 side shafts. So that is the end of the left-hand side shaft, and the right-hand side shaft is going to fit here on top. You can't use one because 1 thrust washer is far too little. 2 thrust washers are too thick. So you need to take one, take the other one, and then play around with it, put it back, tighten the whole differential case, and if you can't turn the 2 side shafts, then you know they're too stiff. Then you take it apart again, play around. It's usually about the 4th or 5th time that you're lucky, and then you've got the proper clearance. They need to turn. Again, it's hard to turn them, but they need to turn freely. Whenever you do a diff and you find a thrust washer, the early thrust washers were manufactured from white metal. Please don't try and save money. And as I've said earlier, the diff is not a component of your car where you can save money. If you want to save money, save it on upholstery or save it on a paint job or something like that, but not on your differential. This was just an interesting photo that I got. Even there, it's got Ford's name and the part number. All right. There you can see the old one again, and the new ones that they manufactured from bronze these days. So you've got one bronze thrust washer, and then you've got 2 steel thrust washers. And the 2 steel thrust washers, they've got the holes in, and they fit on the one side to the differential case, and on the other side to the diff housing. When you start on the left-hand side, check that the 3 washers or thrust washers together, the thickness of the 3 washers should be 0.38 0.380 inch. So that's important because that's a constant, and that's where you're going to start. So when you put there, you can see the axle in the stand, and it's the left-hand side because we know that there's the ring gear. At the bottom of this, I've got the 3 washers, the 3 thrust washers. That is 0.380 thick. And now we can start to work. I've checked the clearance between the 2 side shafts. They're 0. They can turn, but they turn very firmly. They're nice and stiff. After you've done that, please check that when you tighten the three bolts there, that you secure them with a split pin. And what I do is I always take photos, because you know the devil comes at night and you've got no reference. And then I go to my phone and I check the photos and I see, yeah, don't worry, you have installed the split pins. So now in this one, I've got the upper bearing, I've got the bearing in here. So now I can, and I've got the bottom bearing also in, because I don't want the diff to flex like that when I start to test for tolerances here. So both the left hand bearings for the diff is in, and now you can start because you've already assembled your drive shaft, and now we can start to check the tolerances between your pinion gear and your ring gear. This photo is actually a good photo. If you look here between the bolt that secures your drive shaft to the pinion, and you look at the differential case here, there's very little distance between the two of them. And now we can understand why the diff that Roy Copy had this huge movement back and forth and it damaged the case here as well. The diff stand that I've got here has got an extension, and it swings open, and you can fit your drive shaft in this call it sling, and you can square it up properly so that it's 100% 90 degrees, because that is the way that it's going to turn. And then I tighten the bottom three bolts to the differential housing to secure the drive shaft, and now you can start to check your tolerances between the two gears. When Henry Ford produced these cars, the gap there was 30 thou, and because it was so big, it was very easy to assemble it and took very little time. But the disadvantage of the big clearance was that the guys had big wear and tear in the diff. So the suggested tolerances that we work on is 8 to 10 thou clearance. When you start to do this, it's a good thing to not only take it there, but rotate the ring gear so that every 90 degrees you take a measurement, because you can have a run out. So make sure that you've got very little run out. A run out of about 3 thou is still acceptable. If you find that your gap between your ring gear and your pinion is too big, let's say for argument's sake you measure it that the average is 20, and it should be 10 maximum. Then you need 10 to 12 thou shim. If you need a shim, it's easy, and as I've said earlier, you're gonna assemble and disassemble about 10 times. Then you strip everything. You take the prop shop off. You remove your diff that you've assembled. you're going to remove the ring gear again, and then you're going to put the shim in between the ring gear and the differential case. And then you're going to tighten everything, and you're going to put it back again. You're going to put the drive shaft in again, and then you're going to start again with your tolerances to check the tolerances. If you find that your tolerances are fine, the good news is that you're going to remove everything again. You're going to remove everything again because you need to tighten those bolts with nice wires so that they don't turn loose when you drive your car. So after you've done that, and you find that you're happy that it's 100%, then you take your right hand side differential housing, you put your bearing in there, and you put your 3 washers there, your thrust washers. I usually use a lot of grease there because grease sticks them together. It literally glues them together. Make sure that the pins are properly secured in the washers, the 2 outside washers, and then you put your housing on, and then tighten your screws. And then 9 out of the 10 times you will see that when you tighten your screws, you can't turn the differential, because what you actually did is you locked it there, because your differential, the machine section there, fits over your thrust washer, and it compresses everything together and nothing can turn. So what I usually do, there you can see I make use of a lot of Coke cans. So as I've said, the Coke can is about 5 thou, and then I put 5 thou in. I lift it up, and I bolt them together, see if I can turn it. If I can't turn it, loosen all 7 again, put another a layer on, tighten it again, and when you see, now I can turn it. Before you, there's it. So now I've measured it, and I see it's 22 thou that I need to take off. So then I go back, I open up everything again, and then the bronze thrust washer, I do it by hand. I don't do it when the machine is running. I literally, with my hand backwards and forwards, I rub it on this. And when you do it, please ensure that you don't take off too much on the one side. Be very patient when you remove this. Until I put the thrust washer back again, assemble everything, tighten everything again, and when it turns freely, then you know you're okay. If you tighten this, when you turn it shouldn't be an easy turn. It should be a firm turn, but jy moet hom net lekker kan draai. And then you remove it, and you put there's a gasket that fits in here. Then you secure the gasket, and you tighten it, and the gasket will give you then the necessary gap, or the tolerances that you want to have, and that is about 4 to 5 thousandths again. If you're satisfied that all your tolerances is fine, everything turns freely, it shouldn't turn nice and then huck and then turn again. It should be freely. It's nice. It's got to have resistance, But if it locks at sometimes, start all over again. Something is in the way. If you're satisfied, everything is nice, then I remove the sleeves on the outside, and then you insert the inner oil seal. You put your sleeve back again. You put the roller bearing in, and then you can put your outside oil seal on as well. When I insert the sleeves, I usually make use of two hose clamps, one where I start and one at the end. I tighten them properly. It's got a nice groove. When the groove on the out, you can't see the groove now, but it's on the other side. When the groove are totally closed, then it'll fit into the housing here. And please ensure that the left side has got left side bearing sleeves, because they differ. The hole there is for your grease cap there. So when you grease your bearing, that it's got a hole to penetrate to your bearing. And then the groove that I was talking about is usually at the bottom, not at the top. And that is the difference between the two, the left and the right-hand side sleeves. There you can see the groove, left and right-hand side. And it's on a personal note, I prefer the old bearings that Henry Ford and them still used. It's not a solid. The new ones that you buy, it's a solid thing there. It's solid, and it can't give a little bit. If it can't give a little bit and it wants to give a little bit, it's going to break. These are much better. What I usually do is I measure them. All of the rollers, I measure them. And if I find that there's a bit of play, I shim the sleeve on the outside. Exactly the same as this. I just put a Coke can on the outside, so that I've got a 5 thou on this side and a 5 thou on that side. So what I'm actually doing is I'm making the sleeve 10 thou smaller, because the 10 thou clearance that I've got here, now it's a proper fit. Okay, I don't buy the expensive inner and outer oil seals from America. I try to make them myself on the lathe. It's not a brain smash to do it. It's quite easy. Those of you that would like the dimensions, I've got them here. And it's nice to manufacture something yourself and say, yeah, dis myne. Ek het hom nie gekoop nie, hy werk. And that is how they look after I've machined them. That's the inner one, the inside one, and that is the outside oil seal. I think also important about the rear axle is the handbrake cam and the shaft here. That is where your handbrake rod fits onto the axle at the back. Yeah, you can see this is how Roy Kappie's axle was. Look how loose it is. Yeah. And this one is the new one. There you can see the new one. It's got a new cam, a new bush, and a new shaft in there. If ever you are restoring a car, I would suggest that you speak to Johan Rist. He manufactures these. It's of a high quality. It's absolutely a gem to have. It's 100%, and it makes things so easy. After you've assembled your rear axle, you've got your bearings in, you've got your oil seals, everything is 100%. You've attached your drive shaft. Please ensure that your radius rods, that they are equal. All right. Henry Ford was very clever in his triangulation, but remember, this side and that side should be equal. So measure the distance there and measure the distance there when you tighten those two screws at the front, so that you've got a proper restoration. And then the next thing is to test drive the car. Any questions?
Sjoe Philip, dit was ongelooflik hoor. Ek moet eerlik sê, fenominale aanbieding. Ek het 'n hele klomp vrae. Interessant net, wanneer weet 'n mens het jou diff die einde bereik? Ek meen ons het nou 'n klap geluid en hierdie opgetel. Maar byvoorbeeld my 26, hoe weet ons wat is sy toestand? Moet hy oopgemaak word op 'n gereelde stadium? Wanneer bepaal 'n mens wanneer het 'n diff die tyd bereik wat rooikapie bereik het?
Ek gaan nou met tong in die kies gaan ek jou antwoord.
Okay.
En nou moet jy mooi luister. As jy in tune is met jou kar, sal jy dit weet.
Okay, maar vertel my hoe in tune. Ek meen ek ry
die woorde. Ek bel vir Gerard. Ek sê vir Gerard, hier's moeilikheid met jou kar. Hier's 'n verskriklike lawaai in die erns. Het jy dit al gehoor? Hy sê nee. Dis vandat die kar by jou staan. Ek sê Gerard, maar hier's 'n lawaai. Hy sê ja, dis vandat hy daar by jou staan, want ek is in tune met my kar en ek het dit nog nooit gehoor nie. Gerard, nee, ek weet nie of 'n ou regtig net sommer kan sê 'n ewenaar is goed of 'n ewenaar is nie goed nie. Ek dink daar's tog 'n paar goed waarna 'n ou kan gaan kyk. Heel eerste dink ek moet 'n ou luister, want jy sal, soos wat ons gehoor het met joune, as jy agter oopmaak, jy weet jy haal jou agterwiel af, kan jy die sy-speling op jou sy-aster kan jy bepaal. Jy kan, as jy jou wiel op domkrag en jy draai jou wiel, kan jy 'n speling voel, en die speling wat jy voel kan vir jou ook 'n goeie aanduiding gee van wat die speling in die hele ewenaar is, en ook en ook op jou universal joint aan die bokant. Die universal joint kan 'n ou sien. Jy kan kyk na hom as jy die as uittrek. Maar daar's nie, ek dink nie regtig. Daar's goed wat jy elke tweede dag kan kyk om seker te maak jy het 'n goeie ewenaar. Daarom sê ek, as 'n ou 'n ewenaar doen, dat jy, ja, ek dink jy moet dit doen met groot oorleg.
Dink jy dat hierdie ewenaar, jy het in jou aanbieding genoem dat hy 'n verkeerde boutjie gebruik het op 'n stadium? Kan dit wees dat dit veroorsaak dat hy gesliteer het, of dink jy maar dis net eenvoudig net ouderdom, hierdie dryfas, dat dit net eenvoudig kilometers en kilometers is wat hom veroorsaak het dat hy maar op die ou end so sleg gelyk het toe hy hom oopgemaak het?
Ek dink die ou wat dit gedoen het, laat ek weer begin om te sê, ek kan nie dink dat dit een enkele faktor is wat die probleme veroorsaak het. Ek dink dit is meer as een ding met tyd verkeerd geraak het.
Okay.
As jy gaan kyk na die ratte wat op jou sy as kom. Daai goed het speling wat jy speel hom so met jou hand. Dis nie eens dis nie 'n ding wat onder normale omstandighede kan so iets nie gebeur nie. Hy kan nie. So
Ek hoor.
ek dink van die begin af was daar sekere, kom ons noem dit leemtes gewees.
Maar ek moet ook sê, onthou ek bestuur tussen die 26 en Rooikappie, ek ry met beide rond en ek kon nooit regtig 'n verskil agterkom nie. Ek meen as ek die 26 gery het en op parkeer en die volgende dag Rooikappie gebruik het, kon ek nie regtig voel dat daar 'n probleem lê nie. En dit is wat my nou vir my so half kommerwekkend maak. En ek dink ons almal wat nou luister na jou aanbieding is, mens moet seker dan net op 'n gereelde basis sê maar, ek meen ons moderne voertuie gaan in en hulle gaan deur die hele voertuig en hulle gee vir jou dan 'n uiteensetting van alles wat gedoen moet word. Maar ek meen 'n mens sal dan byvoorbeeld my 26 moet op 'n stadium oopmaak en dan kyk wat is die toestand daar binne, want ek meen ek besef nou so ernstig dit is dat ek meen jy het nie remme nie, so jy plaas jouself eintlik in 'n baie gevaarlike situasie deur nie sê maar eenmal in 5 of in 10 jaar jou diff oop te maak en te kyk wat is die toestand nie.
Gerrit, as 'n ewenaar reg opgedoen is, dan gaan hy nie vir jou, hy gaan nie sommer vir jou probleme gee.
Okay.
Maar weer eens, onthou net, ons werk hier met goed wat 110 jaar, 115 jaar oud is.
Ja.
En daarom sê ek sal nie kanse vat nie. Jy weet, daar's Paul, Paul was vroeër by ons, ek weet nie waar, daar's Paul. Paul het amper 'n fatale ongeluk gehad met sy kar. Want die hub het letterlik in die ronde afgekraak, so die sy-aste het binne in die hub gedraai, maar die wiele het aan die bykant gedraai. So al rem hy, staan die as stil en die wiel draai rondom hom. So hy het geen rem gehad nie. Daar's niks wat hy kon gedoen het wat dit kon voorsien het.
Ek wil net byvoeg met wat Philip gesê het daar.
Ja.
In terme van wanneer jy luister na jou kar ook, is dat wat ons met jou kar opgetel het ook, is dat daar was 'n baie, as jy die kar op domkrag en jy laat die engine loop met die wiel in die lug basies, het ons 'n baie growwe geluid en jy kon dit voel op die as jy jou hand op die agter op die diff sit, het jy daai growwe ek weet nie regtig hoe om dit te beskryf nie, maar daar was 'n baie growwe klank en 'n gevoel aan die ding. Jy kan voel dat daar iets verkeerd is, jy weet. So normaalweg en die ander ding wat jy ook kan doen is dat hoe meer die speling is as jy die kar opgelig het en jy draai jou wiel as hy die handrem af is en hy's in rad en jy draai jou wiel vorentoe en agtertoe, dan daar gaan altyd speling wees en is 'n kombinasie van die speling tussen die toleransies van die ratte en natuurlik in die universal joint. Maar daai speling gaan jy agterkom, jy gaan daar so 'n geraas hoor as jy daai wiel draai, jy weet jy gaan klapgeluide hoor. So daar is sonder om oop te maak kan 'n mens luister en hoor of hy grof loop en of hy glad loop en of hy raas en of hy brom, jy weet daai tipe van ding wat jy na kan luister.
Okay. Ja, dit is 'n goeie aanduiding.
Om weer terug te kom na ons karre en die veiligheid daar. Ek dink net nie ons moet ons karre mishandel. Ons probeer die goed te vinnig ry. Ons probeer snaakse goed met ons karre doen. Dis nou wonderlik om te sê, ja, ek was oor Swartberg pas met my kar. Maar ek weet nie of ek dit weer in my lewe sal wil doen. Ek wil dit doen, maar ek weet nie of ek dit sal doen. Want in 2008 is ek met daai kar van jou, Leon, is ek oor Swartberg pas. Ek het die tydren klaar gemaak en die dag toe ek die tydren klaar gemaak het en ek parkeer voor my garage deur, Toe kon ek nie die kar in die garage uitgebyt. Hy wil net nie in die garage nie. Toe het ek die kar agtertoe gestoot en toe gaan hy in. Toe ek die ewenaar oopmaak, toe daar 'n rad van die riemdeur afgebreek. Mos afgebreek.
Sure.
Okay, sjoe. As dit 2 weke vroeër gebeur het, kon ek dit voorsien het? Nee. En daarom, ek voel baie sterk daaroor, dat ons almal moet gaan kyk na wat Arthur gedoen het, wat Kobus gedoen het, wat Harry gedoen het, wat Paul gedoen het. Daai ouens, of jy daarvan hou of nie, Arthur het skuifremme op sy kar gesit. Die ander ouens het eksterne remme opgesit. So daar is vir ons 'n manier om nog steeds ons kar te geniet, sonder om bankbroek te wees om die ding te wil ry.
Ek hoor. Ek dink dit is miskien 'n goeie ding om te kyk na daai alternatiewe remstelsel. Ek sien dit was 'n opsie gewees die tyd toe jy hulle kon bou. Kon jy besluit, kon jy die dekselrad kon jy bysit en dan kon jy, wat noem hulle daai brieke, mountain brakes, of wat het hulle dit genoem?
Dit is Rocky Mountain brieke. Jy het IC remme gekry. Jy het 'n verskeidenheid van remme gekry.
Sal ons kan Rocky Mountain brieke nog kry en op ons voertuie sit vir 'n veiligheidsmeganisme?
Gerard, ja, dis 'n baie duur ding. So stel, as jy daai goed gaan invoer, gaan jou seker hier by 'n 20.000+ rand kos. Waar Harry het vir ons 'n pragtige, hy het bandbrekerswerk vir ons gedoen. Al sy goed is beskikbaar. En hy het dit alreeds vir Kobus Botha op sy kar gesit en ek dink wie se het hy nog gedoen? Hy het sy eie gedoen. So ons kan dit op 'n baie goedkoper manier, Gerard, kan ons dit steeds doen en dit is net so effektief soos die diergoed van oorsee.
Fantasties. En dan net iets interessant, my laaste vraag, ek vra nou baie vrae, sorry. Net interessant, ons as sê maar nou, hierdie diff het nou gebreek op die toer. Net ons versekering wat ons uitgeneem het, dek dit so iets as 'n mens sou 'n diff breek terwyl mens op 'n toer is.
Gerard, praat jy van die SAWA versekering?
Nee, ons versekering wat ons uitneem op die voertuie, daai ekstra versekering wat ons per jaar betaal.
Ja, maar dit hang af.
Is dit die SAWA?
As dit die SAWA ding is,
Deur Puma.
dan is jy gedek.
Okay.
As dit die SAWA versekering is, dan sê nou jou kar het gebreek en jy was op pad Weskus toe en jy's op 'n privaat storie, dan sal hulle jou 'n aand se oornag sal hulle betaal plus jou kar se insleep waar ook al jy hom wil hê.
Maar Philip, as dit gevolg van slytasie is dat die kar breek, dan is jy sekerlik nie gedek nie.
Nee, dis die insleep wat hulle betaal, Philip, die insleep en jou oornag, jou uitgawes.
Okay. Maar Philip, net van my kant af baie dankie. Jou hele aanbieding maak dit vir my so lekker om te sien waar pas alles by mekaar in. Ek het regtig nie besef dit is so werk nie. Jy het met kort in die aanbieding gesê moes jy weer van vooraf en dan weer oordoen en weer van vooraf. So nee, ek wil eers vir jou sê dankie vir die aanbieding. Jo, ek leer ongelooflik baie. En dan tweedens baie dankie vir die werk wat ingegaan het. Ek besef nou eers hoeveel werk het in haar ingegaan en hoekom dit so tydsaam was om maar weer reg te kry. So ek waardeer eers die aanbieding en ek waardeer die regmaak. So baie dankie vir beide. Ek waardeer dit regtig opreg, my vriend.
Ja, ek waardeer jou ook.
Can you hear me?
Nou, miskien nog enige vrae?
Yeah, Bill, can you hear me?
Yes, Bill?
Yeah, I'm just interested, having just done my whole back axle without any of this information. make me a bit nervous. Myself and a lot of help from Harvey and from Jan, we did the whole thing with gut feel. So hopefully it's okay.
I've got lots of trust in Harvey and Johan's ability, and I know you as well. So I'll trust the diff. I promise you. I'll go for it.
If
We'll
you've got,
see.
if
It's
you've
about
got
2 weeks before I'm going to try it out.
Viv, if you've got a reasonable amount of technical know-how, you know, there's a lot of things that are fairly common sense that you work with, you know, so it's not necessarily a specialized job, but I think, you know, if you've got a reasonable background of mechanical repairs and that, you should have been able to figure it out and do it properly, you know.
Well, we did, but we had to make a new pinion from scratch here, the pinion gear, but also I put in a modification with the bearings on the pinion side.
Yeah.
It's on the internet with the we took the hide bearings out, put the other ones in, modern ones. Hopefully that will help a lot.
I've got that modification in the Speedster, Viv. Also with modern bearings in at the spool.
Yeah, well, anyway, we'll see. As you know, my car's it's within weeks of starting the engine and maybe 3 weeks of driving it on the road.
Ja, fantasties, fantasties.
Ja, kan ons asseblief bietjie meer prentjies kry, meneer Rosser, asseblief net so nou en dan 'n update sal ook baie aangenaam wees op die groep.
Okker, as daar nie ander vrae is nie, dan wil ek vir julle sê dankie dat julle geluister het. Ek waardeer dit.
Baie dankie vir jou tyd, Philip. Ons waardeer dit vreeslik. Ek dink dit is baie nodig dat ons dit sien en dit was baie tyd wat daar aangegaan het om die aanbieding te doen en ek waardeer dit baie van jou tyd wat jy insit om die aanbiedings vir ons aan mekaar te sit en te doen. En daar's altyd mense wat iets leer daaruit, so ek glo dit voeg baie waarde by en baie dankie weer eens. Ons waardeer dit regtig.